For 2 whole seasons, Dwight Manfredi has been the kind of man who looks untouchable. The kind of man who walks into a new city with nothing but his instincts and his old-school mob playbook and somehow bends everything around him until it works in his favor. Tulsa was supposed to break Dwight. Instead, he bent Tulsa. He carved out territory, built a crew of loyal misfits, forged unlikely alliances, and established himself as a king in a land that wasn't supposed to have one. But Tulsa King Season 3 is no longer about his rise. It's about the weight of everything he's done finally crashing down. It's about a man who has dodged fate for too long being forced to face consequences. Consequences that no amount of muscle, money, or cunning can truly erase. When you really step back and look at Dwight's journey, you realize he's been running on borrowed time from the very beginning. He took a 25-year prison sentence because of loyalty to a family that eventually betrayed him. When he got out, he expected respect, but instead he got exile, tossed into Tulsa like a problem no one wanted to solve. And what did he do? He turned that exile into opportunity. He made Tulsa his kingdom, but building a kingdom means blood in the mortar. Every brick Dwight laid came with someone's trust broken, someone's territory stolen, or someone's life ended. And in Season 3, the show is finally saying what Dwight's enemies have been whispering all along. Nobody builds an empire without paying for it in the end. What makes the looming consequences so fascinating is that they're coming at Dwight from every possible angle. On one side, there's the law. Season 2 already hinted at federal attention. And Dwight isn't exactly subtle with his operations. The FBI doesn't forget, and neither does the ATF. The bigger Dwight's empire gets, the brighter the spotlight shines on him. Season 3 could very well be the season where the law finally corners him, and unlike his rivals, the law doesn't play by the same rules. You can't intimidate a federal indictment. You can't just bury an agent in the desert. The law waits, it builds cases, it closes in, and when it strikes, it's not just Dwight at risk, it's every single person who tied themselves to his operation. But the legal pressure is just one part of the storm. The rivalries Dwight has ignited are just as dangerous, if not more so. Remember, every time Dwight expanded his reach in Tulsa, he did it at someone else's expense. Bikers, dealers, local gangs, he didn't erase them. He displaced them. And displaced enemies don't disappear. They bide their time, they wait for weakness, and they wait for the cracks to show. Season 3 feels like the moment when all those old threats resurface at once, no longer content to fight him in the shadows. This time, they're coming straight for his crown. And yet, the most devastating consequences aren't external, they're internal. Dwight's biggest blind spot has always been the people closest to him. His daughter, Tina, represents the piece of humanity he still wants to hold on to. But look at the life he's built. How long can he realistically expect her to forgive the trail of destruction that follows him? The heartbreak of Dwight's story is that the very empire he built to secure his legacy might be the thing that destroys his chance at a legacy worth having. What good is being king of Tulsa if your own daughter wants nothing to do with you? Season 3 could push this dynamic to the breaking point, forcing Dwight to finally realize that his way of life doesn't just cost him enemies, it costs him family. And then there's his crew, the men and women who chose to follow him, often out of loyalty or desperation. Bodie, Mitch, and Tyson. They've all hitched their futures to Dwight's star. But that loyalty has a limit, and Season 3 feels like the season where those limits get tested. If the consequences catch Dwight, they catch the crew too. And that raises the ultimate question. How far will they go down with him? Loyalty is easy when you're winning, when the money's flowing, and the enemies stay buried. But what happens when Dwight starts losing? What happens when staying by his side means prison, or worse, death? Here's where the genius of Tulsa King really kicks in. This isn't just a mob drama about power struggles and shootouts. It's a story about inevitability. It's about how a man like Dwight, someone who's lived his whole life making deals with devils, can't outrun the devil forever. And the show has been laying breadcrumbs for this inevitability since day one. Every time Dwight took a shortcut, every time he decided violence was the easiest solution, and every time he chose ambition over peace, he was writing checks his future self would eventually have to cash. Season 3 is that cashing in moment. The brilliance lies in the irony. Dwight went to prison for loyalty. He sacrificed decades of his life to protect a code that ultimately betrayed him. And when he got out, he swore to build something for himself, to finally be his own man. But now, the very thing he built, his independence, his empire, his throne, is becoming the prison he can't escape. Because here's the truth. Every king faces the same ending. The crown is heavy, and eventually, it either gets passed down, or it gets torn off your head. But the burning question in Season 3 is what kind of consequences Dwight will actually face. Will they be legal, stripping him of his freedom, and dragging him back into a cell, forcing him to relive the decades he lost? Will they be violent, with his enemies finally uniting to put a bullet in the king? Or will they be personal, with his daughter rejecting him, his crew abandoning him, and the realization that the throne he fought so hard for has left him completely alone? Each option is brutal, each one feels possible, and the uncertainty of which road the riders will choose is what makes this season so electrifying. And maybe, just maybe, the most shocking consequence isn't Dwight's downfall at all, but his survival. Imagine a Dwight who faces the storm, loses everything, yet somehow finds a way to keep standing. A Dwight who's stripped of his empire but forced to keep living with the ruins of it. That might be the cruelest punishment of all. Not death, not prison, but survival. To watch everything you built crumble, and to carry the knowledge that you caused it. That's a fate even darker than a bullet. What's certain is that Season 3 is no longer about Dwight expanding or outsmarting. It's about Dwight reckoning. For the first time, the show is holding him accountable in a way no enemy ever could. Because enemies come and go, but consequences, real, lasting consequences, don't disappear. They haunt you. They change you. They define the end of your story. And Dwight's story is finally at that stage. So when we talk about Dwight finally facing consequences in Tulsa King Season 3, we're not just talking about plot twists or rival gang wars. We're talking about the very core of who Dwight is and what kind of ending a man like him deserves. Can a man who's built his entire life on violence and betrayal ever truly find redemption? Or is the weight of his choices too heavy, pulling him down no matter how hard he fights back? One of the biggest complaints about Tulsa King so far is the fact that Dwight seemingly never has to face the consequences of his actions. The Black McAdams, for example, disappear after Dwight kills Cale and Waltrip, and he's never even arrested for his murder. Then, he gets out of all the bribery charges from Tulsa King Season 1's finale. He even made up with Cal Thresher through sheer luck at the end of Tulsa King Season 2. In reality, Dwight should be constantly dealing with all the crimes he's committed, and the fallout of his actions and mistakes. Luckily, the premiere of Tulsa King Season 3 finally forced Dwight to face his consequences. Agent Musso revealed that Dwight didn't get off scot-free, and that he now has a sizable blackmail folder that wraps Dwight around his little finger.